midfielder. We're doing a little bit of a transfer roundup show. It's been a busy week, and we're going to see whether or not, first and foremost, you like this. Secondly, whether or not we like it. And thirdly, there's a lot to talk about, so that obviously helps us all like it a great deal. We're in the wonderful, glorious Farmers Arms in Frankby. It is a pleasure to be here. I've got John Gibbons, I've got Phil Blundell, I've got Dan Austin. If you like what we've been doing all week, we'll be dropping some of it in during this show. And if you want to support the Anfield Wrap, there's loads and loads of ways to do that, through the app, through the YouTube on this, any way that you want. So feel free to get involved there. But first and foremost, Dan Austin, a bought a midfielder. His name is Alexis McAllister. He will take number 10. Everyone's got suddenly very into squad numbers, I've noticed. There's a lot of Harvey Elliott at 7 chat. Everyone's like, what do you think about that? What do you think about him taking 10 first and foremost? It's exciting. Feels like he backs himself. Yeah. It's been a while since a midfielder wore 10, isn't it? Garcia, if you count him as a midfielder, but he's sort of half midfielder, half forward. Is that the last midfielder to wear 10? Well, it was wore it since then, man.
You could argue Coutinho, maybe.
Yeah, all right, kind of. Yeah, I'm excited by it. I'm excited by them getting him. First of all, I thought it'd be harder. I thought there'd be more teams in for him. I thought it'd be a lot more money than what it ended up being. It seems like them signing that contract with him before the World Cup has really worked out. For Liverpool and for the players' benefit, really. And for Brighton's, though, because he could have basically ended up leaving on a free. So I think it's one of them, it feels like everyone's a bit of a winner at least. Yeah, they'll be irritated that it's not more, and that the quality of player and the profile that he's now got probably means he's worth more. But the practicalities of the situation meant, yes, he would have been going for less than this, probably, if they've not sorted it out with him. And they might just make the difference up by selling Caicedo to someone daft for approaching 100 million quid or something like that. Also, and then if you're adding them together, then it's just fine, really, isn't it? Rather than treating them as individuals. There is a chance that if he hadn't got a contract with this clause, and they might have had to sell him in January as well. And they might not have then got Europa League football, so it's a bit... swings around. But I like him. We watched him play, didn't we? The away game in January where Liverpool were absolutely dreadful. But we came away from the game saying he's the one there. There's loads of really good players playing for Brighton, and we love Matoma in particular. Well, we're only human. But in particular, we're all innocent men. In particular, McAllister has got, I think, a variety and a range to his passing that's quite unique. You know, lots of really, really good midfielders I don't think are able to kind of change it up the way that he is. Balls over the top for wingers and stuff like that, really good at, but also stuff around the box, playing short balls through to someone to run onto, really good. And I think the way that Liverpool have been playing lately, I think the side that Jones has been on, where the person's higher up the pitch and a bit more central, doing things around the edge of the box. He scored plenty of goals as well, didn't he, last season? I think seems really ideal for him. I know he's played deeper as like a 6 sometimes as well for Brighton and done it really well. But I think in the way that Liverpool have been playing lately, that one seems like it's really suited to him. And I'm excited that they've got him, and I'm excited that they've got it done so early, because it seems like, in comparison with maybe previous years, they've got a very, very clear plan of who they think they want and how to go about getting them, and not seeing them waiting. Oh, does this player want to join us? And if not, we might not have a backup, and we might wait and we might look at someone else. It's no, we're getting this person and we're doing the groundwork early. I've not talked to you about it. I've barely seen you all week now that I think about it. What do you think? Just in general, literally, what do you think of McAllister coming in? I think he's a really good player, and it's interesting that they've gone for him first, and then all the talk is now they're going to whittle down the list effectively. So it suggests that they want to do a couple more, you'd have thought, and getting McAllister over the line almost informs the others, really, in terms of how it's been. So they were obviously confident, but listen, until you do it, you do it. It's great that it's early. You know, the season hasn't finished. We're here, you know, the day before the Champions League final. You know, and so Liverpool are moving quickly. So everything's positive about it. Obviously, the fee is incredible. You know, in terms of what it does. You know, in terms of what other players are likely to go for this summer, and so. You know, do I think he's the best player in the world? No. Do I think he's a really good player available at a really good price who is about as guaranteed as it gets to do well for you? Yeah, I do. So I think it's good, and it's exciting that, you know, they only feel like they're getting started as well, because, you know, it is a big summer. We've all said that, you know, they need several in, and hopefully, you know, we'll say hopefully this is a start. It is just a start. We know it is, because now they're saying, right, well, who do we want? But it almost seems like they're using him as the, right, we've got the McAllister, and we're almost building a midfield around him. It feels like, which we've all said, we sort of feels like we need a new midfield, and it feels like they've agreed, and now they're going to build a midfield around McAllister, which is interesting.
as a person, he's quite, he seems like a very decent guy around the camp. And equally, he's a very sort of motivator. I think you can tell what he's done with Julio and what he's done with a lot of our South American kids and sort of bedding them in. I think, he's good at sort of carrying a team when you need it, sort of in that latter stage of the game when you need him. That's when you need sort of someone that's been in those big moments. And that's one thing that Alexis gets into his game.
But for Alexis, it was a great thing that he was offered to play here at Boca Juniors, because everything he had shown as an Argentino Juniors player, which is, of course, a smaller club, you could say similar to Brighton compared to Liverpool, for example, he repeated it, actually enhanced his performances at Boca Juniors. And that's a completely different thing, because if you play well at Boca Juniors, first of all, the whole country will know you. It's not the same with a small club, but if you perform well at La Bombonera, then the whole country will get to know you easily, better. And the national team is always closer if you perform well at Boca Juniors or at River Plate. That's a fact. There is no way. The spell at Boca Juniors, even if the manager was a very cautious manager at the time, but yet he deployed him in 2 or 3 different positions again, and he performed well. He scored, I remember, a fantastic free kick. So it was what a pity that we will lose McAllister. That was the Boca Juniors feeling at the time, because it's not very easy to find a player that he can deliver immediately, consistently, and without big mistakes.
I can see why people would associate him to a 10, because he wears number 10. He's an Argentinian. You think he's, got that sort of style about him. But to me, I think he's much better, a little bit deeper. He's good at doing the ugly stuff. I think that maybe that's a bit of a misconception that he's going to come in and start getting goals and assists. He's got quite a lot of goals for us, but majority of them through penalties. He's not a very good finisher. Doesn't tend to get too many assists either. So I wouldn't really put him down as a sort of traditional 10, if you like. But I think an 8, 6, holding the ball, breaking up play, doing the ugly stuff, decent passing range, good at driving forward as well, quite strong. He's surprisingly strong, actually.
It's one of those few players, you can find some of them from time to time, in which if you have to guess how old is this guy, you will fail completely. You will completely say like 25, 26. And actually, no, he was like a very, very young player. So the idea that he played naturally under pressure, that he performed well, and that he was, pretty much doing what everyone was expecting him to do, which is not a natural thing for a 18, 19-year-old. It's like they make mistakes. They are more mistake prone than an experienced player. He seems to know where everyone is on the pitch, which allows him also to switch between positions easily. He has like this compass in his mind, and which is one of the best gifts that he has, in my opinion. And he showed that in the World Cup. I mean, that was fantastic. That was really surprising, because I was there in Qatar, and sometimes from the stands, the vision is not always perfect, but there are like these mini moments in which you thought that was Messi, right? No, that was McAllister. So that kind of confusion, which is a fantastic confusion. That was McAllister playing the World Cup final. It's like, to frame it, it's like he played fantastically well. Fantastic. He also was part of the amazing goal of Di Maria, but he played so well, so sure of everything that he had to do, so talented. So it's clear that he doesn't feel the pressure, because he had always performed as someone that had 100 caps, and he had only played like four or five, if I remember correctly, before. I think Argentina wouldn't have made it without McAllister and without Enzo Fernandez.
Very happy. I like this. John's point there on the reliability. It's been sort of emphasised with him in terms of injury record, but I think there is a reliability point in terms of literally the fact that he does feel very much like a footballer who you get a 7 out of 10 out of as a minimum. And this season, a few of our lads where we've perhaps thought that in the past have quite emphatically not done that. And they're the sort of players that managers love to build from. I think we can think of who's the most important player to a manager. Is it the best one? Is it the one who's capable at the moment of mercurial genius? I think a lot of football managers quite like to know that they're picking 5 lads who will almost certainly play a 7 out of 10 for them, and he's one.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of sort of similarities with sort of the time around, 3, 4, 5 years ago, when it was pretty much about loads of lads being decent and doing bits and letting the front three really come into their own. Like, there's still Salah there, there's Jota, there's Gakpo, there's Diaz, there's Núñez. There's going to be a lot of emphasis on those 5 people to be the 8s, the 9s, the 10s out of 10 next week, and then people behind them are going to support him, and he's perfect for that. I think one thing I've been really impressed with is just his ability to just get the ball 10 yards forward, whether that's with a quick pass or whether he's carrying it himself. I think there's a few of those little videos doing around where there's one at Anfield where he sort of wins the ball, beats a couple of men, and he plays someone in down the right-hand side, I think, and Brighton are suddenly away into a lot of space. And you look at that and it's like, well, that can great. Because I think one thing that this Liverpool team needs footballers to do, particularly midfielders, is just create half a yard of space themselves. If they create that half a yard of space themselves, they open the pitch up, and they're already causing a lot of problems for other teams. Now, obviously, they need to be able to do something with the ball then, which he's got in his locker, absolutely, and I'm excited to see this play. It's something a bit different that I feel like we've missed this season, and listen, that's what we all want. We all want the stuff that we didn't like this season to not happen again, and I think this is the first. It's easy to say it's the first step towards it because he's literally the first player we signed, but stylistically it's the first step as well.
It's one where, John, you're making the point about, it's now about what happens next, and there's the strong links that have come in for Khéphren Thuram and Manu Koné that appear to be, very much there. The one that strikes me, and Phil's there saying, maybe it is all about creating that platform for the front three. My only slight concern on some of these links is just the goals, and I think especially the way we're playing. I think you need to make it feel like those lads who are playing behind the three, I could be wrong, but I feel like I need to feel like there's 10 goals in whoever, 10 goals in the position, if you know what I mean, over the course of the season. And that's my only real concern. Thuram's not scored 10 goals in his entire senior career. Koné only gets 1 last season. Koné might be looking at one of them as more of a 6. I think the other thing about this is I do sort of feel a bit like we might not know a lot until we see some pre-season as well, to be fair.
Yeah, it is an interesting one, isn't it? Because when the team was winning everything, that midfield didn't get a lot of goals, but the front three obviously did. Now, is he thinking, well, we tried to move away from that, we need to go back to, and if that engine's really ticking, as it should be, if they're first to everything, if they're winning a lot, if they're allowing us to dominate the games, is he feeling like, well, I'll get you them 10 goals, Neil, from the front three? I'll get you those. We're all saying that Diaz, has he got as many goals in him as you like? Sort of, does he jump up? Do we all jump up? A few. If we're more dominant in games, there was times last season that Brighton won. It might as well be me playing instead of Mo Salah. Yep. Do you know what I mean? That game. Do you know what I mean? Because we're not in it. We haven't got the ball. We're not getting into any sort of good positions. And so, it depends how you're using the midfield. Listen, I'd always like at least one who's capable of getting on the end of things and doing stuff that's right.
And that is Curtis.
It is, yeah, it is Curtis, but it'd be interesting to see, how he sort of sees him in terms of, moving forward. He's obviously proven in those last few games whether, that he's an asset to the squad, but whether it's an asset to the squad and the manager wants to pick him 2 of the first 3 league games, or whether he's an asset to the squad, but he still feels like, if we want to be where we are, then we need, better than him at the moment starting these big games. I'm not sure. There's a lot of wait and see on this, isn't there? And there's a lot of wait and see in terms of, how he uses this midfielders as well, because, if Thuram was sat here, he might be saying, I'll get you goals. They've just had me doing all this other stuff. You want goals, Neil. Get me a goal and I'll kick it in it all day. You know, so there might be cases that you've seen more of him in terms of sort of what these lads can do. So that's what excites you. But in terms of the quality that these lads have got, it does feel like the ones that we are being linked with, you can see what's attracting the manager of the club to them, and you can see how it can help us kick on.
Yeah, you're looking at it and going, I see what they do, I see what we want, I see how this fits perfectly, and that's how we got to where we did. We bought footballers suited to what they want, and still, I think there's a thing where people think we've just stopped buying footballers. We haven't. We've bought quite a few footballers the last few years, just probably not as many as we could have done. And you look at Jota, fits, excellent at pressing. Gakpo, very like Firmino style. He's got a lot to learn before he gets there, but that's what he is. Then Diaz can do a lot of the Mane stuff without probably quite having the goal output. And it all fits. A lot of it fits in what you see. The only sort of curveball really has probably been Thiago, and I think that was probably a thing worth doing. Even if it doesn't work in the long term, it was definitely a thing worth doing. But I just feel like there's a sense of, right, we've got a plan. That's basically all I wanted in a way. I'm not going to sit here and say we should sign that player, sign that player, sign that player. I just want a plan that makes sense, that the manager's happy with, that we sit there in early August and go, right, let's go, because we've got to go in August. We have to.
But this is why I keep coming back to attacking midfielders, and I did last summer. Go back to the start of the post-COVID season, and he's determined to pick Elliott, and Elliott does relatively well on the position. We start last season, I think he's looking to make Liverpool a little bit more attacking, looking to pick Elliott here and there, all that sort of stuff. The way the season ends, Henderson and Jones are really, really high. You can't understate. They come back and they work, I'm not saying they don't, but they're really, really high. And that's the thing that I'm still sort of, Veiga could be that link as well, but I think if Liverpool are going to, I don't want us to be looking around for attacking midfielders basically and feel like we haven't got enough of them. If this is the season, the summer, where we're making quite sort of considerable change. That's not to talk any of the links down or anything like that. I just quite like there to be a player Liverpool have got their eye on. That player could be Gakpo for all I know, but a player Liverpool have got their eye on who they feel as though can play between the midfield line and the attacking line and be a goal threat that scares the opposition.
I think they've got enough. I'm not now interested in midfielders who are meant to score goals, really. If you buy one and he does, then fine, I'm not complaining about it. But I'm not looking for a midfielder anymore that I think's a goal threat. There's Jones, there's McAllister. If you want to play Elliott, I think you can play him on that side and try and use him as that. I think the ones who are actual proper centre midfielders are ones that we've not got that many of anymore, and ones where we need the legs to replace the ones who have not been doing it well enough for a while. So I'm interested in somebody who plays the right-hand side, like Henderson's been doing. I might end up really high up the pitch sometimes because that just happens because Liverpool are by and large the better team.
They've got to be able to go on the outside though, Salah.
All right, that's fine, but they've not got to be able to score loads or assist loads, I don't think. I'm not really that interested in that. They've got to do an awful lot of playing right-back as well. And I think if you're asking someone to simultaneously play that position and score 10 and also play right-back, that's really hard. I don't think that person exists. I just don't think it's really possible to have them doing both of the things, and I'm more interested in them doing the defensive and midfield stuff than I am the attacking stuff. I think if you want more goals from the Liverpool team in general, your issues, your forwards, you're probably looking at two of them and not backing them, whether that's Diaz or Nunes or whoever. If you want, like the Liverpool have bought in the past few years many very expensive forwards who should be very good at scoring goals. If we're saying Liverpool needs to score more goals, then that's the problem as far as I'm concerned. Not whoever's playing 6 needs to get 5 or whatever it is. I would be immensely happy if Liverpool started.
Do you still think that even with this change of shape?
Yes, I think it's fine. I also think that the change of shape means Alexander-Arnold might score more. Doesn't mean he's not doing the sort of thing where he goes and sits on the edge of the box and plays 10 like he was for bits of the season before, and it was never really working anyway. But I think by just being in the opposition half in central areas, he might just get some more.
He's also someone who they might let shoot from outside the box, because that's one thing we've been very heavy on the last 3 or 4 years is
not allowing that.
Don't shoot.
Alexis McAllister really likes shooting from outside the box, so I think there might be a bit more of license to do that now.
Whether
I end up liking that or not, I'm not sure. But I think it'd be weird to buy him if you're going to then tell him you can't shoot.
It's sunny day. We're having a pint.
We've ruined Neil's summer here.
But no, I want the person on the right to be able to run up and down loads and get Liverpool up the pitch. So when you're saying Henderson's high an awful lot, sound, but I want that person to get Liverpool high up the pitch as opposed to then, he's high up the pitch in order to score a goal from sort of right wing or whatever. And I think Thuram is perfect for that. you know, when we talked in February or March or whenever it was about him, the key things that Liverpool were not doing last season that he ranks really high for were progressive passes and progressive carries, i.e. he gets the ball deep and either by running with it or passing it, he gets his team up the pitch. And so many times last season I watched Liverpool and thought, there's 3 attackers here and everyone else, and there's no link. And you can do that link in loads of different ways. It's like, oh, you've got to play a 10 whose job it is to be the link or whatever. But no way did Liverpool find in order to do that. They got better at it towards the end of the season when Salah and Diaz are playing a little bit tighter and dropping deep to pick up the ball, and Diaz especially is carrying it forward and stuff like that. Those progressive passes. Exactly. But I particularly want someone on the right who runs up and down all day long and is really hard to get off the ball. Thuram mightn't score all season, I mightn't get an assist all season. The weakness in his play is in and around the penalty area, but I'm not asked because the 3 up front, whatever you would call the full-back, but Alexander-Arnold, whoever's sort of going forward on the left-hand side as well, and the McAllister/Jones position, that's their job. This fella's the one who's got you to that position. And then he might be standing there and helping and passing the ball 5-10 yards or whatever, but I'm not asking him to put a brilliant ball into the far post, or I'm not asking him to score from the corner of the box from 18 yards out or whatever. So I think he's perfect for that, and I think I'm perfectly happy with going back to a Liverpool midfield where it's a bit more, how can we get the lads who are meant to score? But there is still one extra one on the other side who's more liable to score, whether it's Jones or McAllister, in my mind, than what, you know, on the left previously Wijnaldum would have been. So I think it is still progress from that, but you're asking these midfield players to be a much bigger help to the attackers than what was happening before, rather than saying, oh, we need X amount of goals from midfield or whatever, because I feel like whenever any team sort of does that, it never really happens unless you're compromising up front somewhere. So you might have like a Lampard type who's getting 15, but whoever's playing wide left isn't actually scoring that many. You know what I mean?
Well, even John,
I feel like he
just did 20.
I feel like he just sort of
Malouda, it felt like he never scored.
Yeah, I feel like he just kind of, when you start saying you want goals from midfield, I feel like you just move them about. You just move the goals rather than get them all goals. You know what I mean?
I'd say at this moment in time that he is quite versatile. I mean, I wouldn't sort of pin all defensive kind of responsibility on him, but equally, you know, he can sort of get involved, you know, in that aspect, kind of similarly to Camavinga, you know. But I certainly would sort of, you know, have him sort of projecting, you know, more forwards in terms of joining the attack than I would, you know, sort of having him sort of rooted in the defence. So he's certainly somebody who, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily expect him to be turned into sort of a classic number 10, but could be sort of a very kind of all action. You know, technically, you know, he's a fine player. You know, you'll see him score the odd eye-catching goal as well. So he certainly knows how to find the back of the net. I mean, I wouldn't be sort of looking at him as somebody who could potentially be prolific and sort of be putting up double figures in terms of goals and assists, but sort of what he contributes, you know, technically in terms of sort of, you know, chance creation, you know, getting the team on the ball and then keeping hold of the ball, those sorts of, you know, skills. You know, he's certainly, you know, at a very good level for that. And I think as well, it would be interesting to see how he would develop physically, you know, once exposed to Premier League football, because Ligue 1 itself is a physical league, and you know he's sort of thrived there already. But you know, when players leave Ligue 1 and go from France to the Premier League, they tend to have, you know, a greater understanding tactically than a lot of the other players. You know, the Premier League, yes, it's, you know, 100 miles an hour and extremely entertaining, but it's not always the most tactical of leagues. And you know, tactics is certainly something that's drilled into the players, you know, from a very young age in France. And I think sort of him coming over, you know, with that sort of fresh in his mind, that would certainly help him to stand out, as has often been the case, you know, with a lot of players of similar profile who have come over in the past.
I think what I'm talking about though is wanting goal threat. If this is going to work, because if we're going to have Henderson making line-breaking runs, which we did have, you can't have a situation where
I think Henderson overcompensates for the things he can't do by other stuff. So I think there's times last season where he's a bit of a busy fool, to be honest with you. And so you're looking at what he's doing and saying, you know, we need to add quality to that. Whereas I reckon a better player just doesn't need to do as much as what Henderson does. I feel like, you know, he was struggling with the position, and his answer, like a lot of us do, is you just end up, you know, running about and making up for effort what you've not got in like guile or whatever it is, the actual thing. And so I think whoever we get will play the position very differently from Henderson. I think, Henderson, has the smarts to occupy space and things like that, and he'll sort of do that.
And he'll go outside for you.
He will, yeah, and he will. But I think, if this fella's doing everything that Dan does, I don't think we're there. But yeah, but he's not going outside. Do you know what I mean? And so I think there's sometimes we all do it. We define the position by who's playing at the moment.
That's not my thing really on
who's
this.
going to come in and make it their own thing.
That's not my thing on this. Is I feel as though what Dan's describing we're 6 weeks away from saying who's showing the width, rather than even the idea of the goal stuff. Who's going outside? Because Salah's only going to want to come inside. That's part of the point. So we need. And I agree with you all. Sort of, if you go through the list, you'd end up describing this absolute unicorn footballer. And this is one of those things that sort of pulls me back to, well, maybe we're not going to keep playing this way. Maybe this was just a short-term solution.
Yeah,
and we're going to do something else. Because
that is possible, but I think we can only sort of operate on the basis that they are going to keep doing it, because otherwise you're just purely guessing then. Yeah. Like they might come up with something totally different and they work on it in pre-season. It might be loads better, but we haven't got a fucking clue if they're going to do that at the minute or what it would look like. You can only sort of go, well, they spent ages trying to come up with something, got to that, it was quite good. You can only presume it will be an extension of that. And there might be something that changes in the midfield or something to do with the attack in the summer because they just didn't have the time or the energy to do it in the back end of a campaign where they were playing every few days. But you've got to presume it's the basis of what's going to happen afterwards. And I think that he's got a key set of things that means he plays that side really well. Not necessarily perfectly, and not necessarily with the threat that you've got, but I'm saying I'm not really bothered about the threat. I think the threat comes from enough other places. And also he's competent, like he is helping the threat, it's just not him. They're not looking at the lineup going, I tell you what, our left back's got to be, or our left back on our left side of the centre half got to be really worried about him making a run towards the far post, but I don't want to make it a run towards the far post because he's got to be on the edge of the box, ready to absolutely leg it back and do right back. And I'm more interested in that. And then there's 4 other people mainly being the attack, and it's their job to score the goals. And he is helping do that, but it's not his ultimate responsibility. And if we get to the end of the season and he scored 3 or 4, then fine, I'm taking that. And if Koné's playing as a 6 and he scored 1, I'm also taking that.
The six is not my point, really. The 6 isn't my point. My point is where the other goals are coming from. And I mean, McAllister's point is a little bit, I think a lot of what McAllister does brilliantly is he also gets back and covers. I think it might be a little bit different. I also think there's a chance that there might be 1 or 2 sold, Phil, that might still surprise people. I think we're acting as though the lads who have gone from midfield are the lads who have gone. I still think there's room for there to be 1 more exit as a minimum in here for Liverpool to maybe end up with something a bit different.
Maybe. I'm just not sure who and how much you get for any of these players. Like who are we thinking, for example?
But it's not so much the money. I don't think it's the space and the wages.
Well,
like I think we did a transfer gutter show on Wednesday, and we were talking about sort of what's next. And when you look at the number of players who are there to play, who can play deeper, like I'm not sure we can buy one if we don't shift one out. I'm talking here about more like a specialist here. So someone like if you want Lavia, for example, from Southampton, I think you need to get rid of one. Or I don't understand
if you buy anyone, it's probably going to pay 6. So let's just say Koné for argument's sake, because he's the one most talked about. You end up with Koné, Fabinho and Bajcetic.
Yeah.
They'll all play the same one, and probably no others. Maybe Koné could do the right, but predominantly he's doing the deep one. I don't know where Thiago's playing.
Yeah.
Like I'm looking at all the 3 positions they've been playing the last few weeks since they changed the shape, and I'm going, even if you're fully fit and playing really well, I don't know what one of those jobs you're actually good at. Yeah. He can't do the one on the right where you've got to be bombed up and down all the time. He's not doing the one on the left where you're arriving at the back post and scoring goals. And he might be able to do the 6 at home to like sides that aren't running off him so much. But I'm still going, there's 3 other players there that I'd probably just rather pick. So I think it maybe just makes sense if someone is willing to take him for probably not very much money, and he's on an awful lot of money every week as well, to just say, you know what, this was really nice, I enjoyed the passing, but should we shake hands and you go and play somewhere nice for a few more years, get yourself another big contract, because there's 3 players to play that one. If we're looking at the right-hand side, well, I'm just counting Henderson as right-hand side for the purposes of this, but if you end up with Thuram, Henderson and Elliott to do the right-hand side, that's another 3 players for one position, and then I'm looking at McAllister and Jones for the other one. It's still 9 centre-mids, and like as much as, you know, it felt like they had 10 last season, it didn't feel like enough. It's because loads of them were missing. You're looking at these and going, the injury record there is an awful lot better, and it's players who very much shoot the individual bits of where Liverpool are playing. I don't see where Thiago gets minutes or in what position he's meant to be playing. And I know they've done the whole sort of getting him operated on so that he's fit for pre-season, and that seems strange if you're going to try and move him on. But I'm just looking at it and thinking, I don't know where or when you're meant to play anymore.
Yeah, I think he's quite versatile. I think he's somebody that maybe, if you look at that Fabinho role, for example, that ability to break up play, get Liverpool moving, not somebody who's going to get loads of goals, but somebody who's very much a presence in that midfield area. That's the kind of guy you're talking about. Obviously, McAllister is a different player. He's much more rounded, much more attacking. So I think actually, if you are going to bring in somebody like McAllister, then you would look at somebody like Koné as well, because you're looking at that balance. You want different players to fulfill different roles, and I think they are significantly different. So I think if you're looking at Koné, certainly as he is right now, you lean towards that Fabinho type role rather than somebody a bit more attack minded.
On the left side of the midfield, box to box, he made his best games. A bit like the position of Toni Kroos, but not. He's a totally different player because he's more box to box player. But this quarterback position, often players have who are very physically, but also with their mind in the offense. And if you just take a look at him, what he's doing very well, you see that he's very good in this Gegenpressing, this Jürgen Klopp's word, Gegenpressing. He's very good. The second balls, also in the front areas of the pitch, and he also and what me personally impressed me most is with the ball and under pressure, he's such a good and such a like an adult player. He's not in the stressful situations, or it seems to be he's very cold in this situation, and also had a good technique with the ball. So that's on the positive side.
Yeah, and as I say, he's been playing first team football for Gladbach since he was 20, and he hasn't looked out of place at any stage. I remember there was a game against Bayern in the Cup last season, and they won 5-0, and he scored a goal in that early on. He was instrumental in that win. So in the big games, he turns up. He's certainly not fazed by facing big sides. So yeah, I don't, obviously if he did move to England, there would be a period of adjustment. But in terms of the physicality of it, he's 6'1", he's strong, he could deal with the Premier League. So I don't think that part of it would be a concern at all.
I think 5 or 6 years ago, I would say, maybe it's too early for this step, but it changed a bit the last years. Also, the style of playing in Premier League is changed a bit. Also, Jürgen Klopp has to do something new in this summer. If you just see the last season, or also the seasons before, that he has to fit his style of playing, and maybe Koné is a puzzle piece. So I think this could be a good step for him, but also for Liverpool fans, give him some time to come to Anfield Road to feel these new emotions over there. Then he could be a good puzzle piece for sure. Yeah.
Similarities in terms of intensity, I guess. I think Jude is well above him in a few categories. Jude, I think, in terms of being a remarkable leader at the age that he is, the all-round skill set. We've seen Jude score goals, make goals this season. So he's probably a much more rounded player. But that's not to say Koné is not a good player. He is. Absolutely he is. And I think for what Jurgen Klopp has traditionally wanted from his midfielders, he's a good fit. He's an energy guy. He's somebody who tackles, breaks up play, can get a team moving, can give the ball to more talented attacking players. So if you want somebody who's going to do that, absolutely, he's the man for it. So is he as good as Jude? No, absolutely not. But that doesn't mean he's not still a good player and an excellent prospect. He's very much a tackling machine at the moment. So that part of it is fine, although that can improve because obviously somebody who picks up 12 yellow cards probably needs a bit of work in that regard. So yeah, he's not somebody who scores goals regularly. But what we have seen in flashes is he can strike a ball beautifully. He can hit goals from the edge of the area. Seen him do that a couple of times. And his passing can improve, but his passing's okay. So I think there's stuff there to work on. But I think primarily you're looking at a guy who gets others the ball in dangerous areas. So I'm sure Klopp would work on his passing. I'm sure he would work on getting him into areas where he can score goals. But of course, if you think of some of those Liverpool midfielders, Fabinho, James Milner, guys like that, even Jordan Henderson, really, not regular goal scorers, but they're not meant to be. They're not really in the team for that. They're facilitators to allow, say, the fullbacks to get forward or to give the front three the ball in areas where they can do damage. So he's definitely somebody who's capable of playing that kind of role.
The only thing I sort of think with this is I think we're assuming that, like, this is almost working to a theory that Trent plays every single game. And not only plays every single game, he plays every single game in that particular role. And if he doesn't, like, there's going to be probably 20 games next season he doesn't do that in, if you include the Cup, a few league games, early stage of Europe. There's a lot of games where he just won't do it in. He won't either play or he won't play in that position, I suspect. And then that becomes easier then to work Thiago into it. But also, we don't know that it's necessarily going to be the same every week as a plan A anyway.
It might just end up playing 4-3-3.
There's a lot. I'm quite interested to see what we do in pre-season, because the thing I thought, I said this quite a lot at the time, but the reason why it was so interested in this new formation is that we basically did it without any training at all. Yeah. It just came in because it wasn't there against Chelsea on a Tuesday night, and then it's there against Arsenal on a Sunday afternoon. So if you work out, there's basically 3 days between those games. If you
practical terms.
That's not a lot of time to do anything. And then they have the game the week after, and then the weekend after, midweek after, and so on and so forth. And it meant that it just sort of got thrown together. And it might be that it's the same in theory, but it looks very different, and you suddenly can play about with what Thiago's doing, and the left back plays in a different position, and you pull the other midfield back, and it ends up more like, I thought Villa were quite interesting when they came to Anfield, and they effectively played 2-4-4 almost. It was a really, like, 2-4-2-2. It was really weird, and there's loads of different ways that, we see formations as 4-4-2, 4-2-3-1, 4-3-3, 3-4-3, whatever, whereas the reality of it is that they're very different. Most formations do not bear any resemblance to what the TV channels will put up at the start of the season. This is what they're playing. And it's quite interesting. They've actually started putting Man City's up as 3-2-3-2, and I'm not even sure that's right, to be honest.
It's maybe the most accurate you can get when you're writing them down,
but there's no...
When Liverpool played 4-3-3 and won everything, they were playing 2-3-5.
Exactly.
But you would never call it that.
Certainly. You can play, like for example, you play a right back, you play a left wing back, but it would always be on as a right back and a left back. And they're not necessarily doing the same thing. So we've got the summer to be able to do a lot of things, and I know that sounds the simplest thing. We can buy who we want, we can fit them in however we want, and it feels there's a little bit of blank canvas stuff. So I think making hard and fast judgments on, is there a role for him? I'm just not quite sure on
this is one of my things with the Europa League and the moves they've got, Phil, and then John. I feel as though there is a bit of a thing here where there will be pre-season for them to look at some stuff, but I think I wonder if part of what they're actually buying for here, and it's worth saying, the players we're mentioning, Veiga we haven't got to yet, but they're all under 22, 22 or under, with the exception of McAllister, who's 24, who's come in. But McAllister, one of the things we're saying about him is he can do 6, he can do 8, and he can do 10. I just sort of feel a little bit like the buying flexibility and the buying for the idea of we might need to have ongoing flexibility for at least a couple of years. Not necessarily even whilst we're working this out, but maybe whilst we're doing it all game by game.
Yeah, there was also one thing that Ferguson used to do, and that he used to do, like a periodisation thing where, Dimitar Berbatov would be fantastic in November, and then he wouldn't play in January because that was what he was doing. Well, you can do that with players, you can also do it with formations. Yeah. And then also, if you're able to change your formation about the other team and not necessarily sure what you're planning on either, that gives you an edge as well. So just it feels like we're possibly not going to have a first 11, and there's just going to be a best case 11, and I think that's probably the best way of doing it. You
talked briefly, but we didn't actually then go into it, about the idea of Gakpo playing as a midfielder as well, and he did that towards the end of the season a couple of times, didn't he? And it didn't really work, but it didn't work because it meant that the person who was playing down the middle wasn't doing the stuff that we needed them to be doing in terms of receiving the ball and kind of getting the pull off the pitch and stuff. I think if you're playing Bournemouth at home, for example, it's perfectly reasonable that you'd have McAllister playing the left side to tie up and Gakpo's doing the right, and you're not playing Thuram, for example. And then you're asking Jota to play in the middle as the link or something like that. And that plays into your flexibility point that maybe we're sort of putting these in boxes and saying, well, there's 3 to do that and whatever. But there's actually more of it than you'd think. And that's the kind of thing that they'll be doing in the summer that, again, we can't necessarily perceive. But they'll be figuring out, oh, actually, you know what, we see this person as a 9 or whatever, but if we're doing such and such playing the 9 on a Thursday, actually would be better off with him at the 8 because we're playing such and such at home on the Sunday afternoon after that. And there'll be different ways of getting through against different teams and stuff. Which means that you've got different people doing different jobs basically, whereas understandably we're trying to be like, you've got to have enough for this and you've got to have enough for that and whatever else. But I agree with the point about in the past few years, compared to what I think they were doing before, they've brought a lot more flexibility than what was happening in maybe the 2 years before that.
And there's something we also overstate, you know, whenever I go back through old teams, John, you know, you'll go back to sort of 2017 through to, say, COVID. There's loads of games. I mean, Shaqiri gets an unbelievable number of games in the 18-19 season that changed the whole shape. Salah goes up front. There's games where Lallana pops up from nowhere and it looks like they're playing with a front 4. I think we can overstate. We knew what we were doing when the chips were down. With that side as it was, we knew when it was going to go to the 2-3-5 or the 2-5-3, whichever way you want to look at it. But game by game, in the first half of these seasons especially, he was showing loads and loads of variance, the manager then.
Yeah, and there's more chances for young players, I think, the better you get. Like, it almost feels like it should be the opposite, like, oh, if everything's going wrong, you just throw the kids in. But actually, the manager's sort of reluctant to do that then, whereas, you know, if things are going well, you know, you can see how there's games for Kay Gordon, say there's games for, you know, Carvalho. You know, if we're playing really well and then it is Bournemouth at home and he just wants to give Kay Gordon a go wide right, there's the opportunity to do that and no one's going mad, do you know what I mean? It's a bit of a, oh, fucking hell, you see what he's doing here. But if he's doing well for the 23s, he's in there. And so I think, you know, it is all about starting well. You know, Dan Murray's, it might have been Phil, sorry, made that point before, like starting well in August, and decisions for managers just sort of become easier and you're able to not necessarily carry 1 or 2, but take a couple of risks, knowing that the team is functioning and, you know, the 9 players that you picked who play most weeks will sort of do the job. And I think that will allow us to use some of these more younger players. Like you've seen it this season for City, you know, there's players who they play more than you think. You know, some of these lads really.
Yeah,
you know,
Nico Lewis.
Yeah. There's quite a few of them who've, you know, Cole Palmer. You know, they've racked up the games on the slide. Yeah. It's because they're able to pick them in a league game. They know they're going to win and still win. And that's not to say these lads aren't talented and aren't contributing. They are, but you're just able to use them in sort of these ways, really. So your squad actually gets bigger the better you're doing.
But Gabri Veiga's exciting.
I really like him. Yeah, it's a funny link because, you know, I again mentioned on the transfer show on Wednesday, it's almost traced back to, you know, Newcastle and them going like, we don't think we're going to get him, we think he's off to Liverpool. And then there's been a bit of digging done since then. He does look a really good footballer. I really like that, you know, these players who put a lot on themselves to get through these situations. That was a big game against Barcelona, last game of the season. You needed to win. Obviously, Barcelona wasn't a big game for at all, I accept that, but still, it is a big one. He gets 2 goals to win in the game. You know, that makes it 11th of the season. I like players like that. So you look at his numbers and great, but also, well, he seems like a personality. If he's going like, I'm going to be the man to sort this out today, and then he does it, is a quality I really like.
Yes, he's an attacking midfielder. He's actually quite a versatile player, so he can play in most midfield positions, but he would normally play as an attacking inner midfielder. He's quite good, actually, despite being an attacking midfielder. He's, I would say, surprisingly good defensively as well. So, like, especially one-on-one situation in the defense. So he's very helpful in that regard as well. The thing with the goals is quite interesting because up until a few seasons ago, he was not a goal scorer. So, like in the youth teams, he wouldn't score the goals. It wasn't until, you know, 2 seasons back maybe where he was playing for the Celta B team in the 3rd division in Spanish football, where suddenly he scored 9 goals in a season, and everyone was like, "What just happened?" and now, as you see with Celta, like this season, he scored 11 goals and made, I think, 4 assists, being very, very involved in the goals and being one of the best goal scorers in the entire league. So that's quite a fun new attribute to his game. But that he's really gotten really good at, obviously. And he can score quite a lot of different goals, but I would say he's mainly, you know, the long shots and things like that outside of the penalty area. But yeah, it's just I think he's just a very good, versatile player in many ways. He's obviously very young, still quite new at playing at this level, and maybe he would need some more consistency sometimes, and there can be some games where he's not as good as the other ones, but that's just normal for his age and for where he is, and maybe sometimes he doesn't dribble too many and loses the ball and things like that. So he's not perfect in any way, but it definitely is an extraordinary talent.
He's exciting.
He is, yeah. One thing I've noticed is there's a lot of shots from the edge of the box that result in goals there, and I'm like, well, coach that out of you, son. But he seemed to arrive well and find himself in space on the edge of the box quite a lot now. He plays in a team where he probably gets more space on the edge of the box than he would if he was at Liverpool, but still you need the awareness to get into these positions, and when you're there you need to do something with it, and what I've seen of him, he does. I don't know a great deal about him. I genuinely hadn't heard of him a week ago, so I'm not going to be able to give you chapter and verse on his career or his suitability, but it comes back to my point. I don't really care who we sign, as long as they're happy with who they get and it's all thought out and there's a role for him, and they're not buying someone and going, oh, well, what are we doing with him now? Whereas that doesn't feel like it is with him. It feels like he's got a purpose and sound. It does almost feel like he could be that fella you were sort of talking about who does the right hand side and can actually have some attacking output as well.
Are you excited by the idea of a couple of defenders? Do you think they'll do a couple of defenders, or do you think just do the one?
I think they might just do one. I don't know, it just feels like it ends up being a lot. Like I know it's not like much work, but like they might have to do a goalkeeper when Kelleher leaves it, you know what I mean? It's just an awful lot to get through in a single summer. I think it might be the idea of getting a defender now and then in 12 months another one, something like that. I would like them to buy a forward ideally as well, just because there's only 5 of them and one's always injured.
And especially if you're talking a bit about Gakpo in midfield.
Yeah, exactly. Then suddenly there's some games where you're playing all 4 of them and there isn't one on the bench.
Yeah.
And also when they did challenge for every trophy in 21-22, there were technically 7.
7, yeah.
I'm not asking for a belter, really. I'm not asking for one that like starts or anything, but I would like probably...
What does he look like, the one you want?
Well, probably in terms of minutes, sort of a combination of Minamino and Origi that season. I don't mean in terms of like qualities and that, but you know the amount of minutes that they get.
Barely any.
I know, but I'm saying, but they got plenty in the cups and that. Yeah. And I'm not playing like Diaz a lot in the Europa League, for example.
The only thing I sort of see what you're saying is I think there might be a lot of Doak and Gordon.
All right, maybe there is, but I've barely ever seen them play.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
So it's probably fine, but
just think, like, you got to remember, Kay Gordon started in a League Cup semi-final, so the manager obviously thinks something of him, and I know he's been out in that, but between him and Doak, you've got, ultimately these players have got to, if you see them as a long-term option, they've got to get in there somehow.
I don't think they will sign another forward. I would always have another forward for a start. Like even if they had 7, I'd say, well, I wouldn't turn one down.
The tough thing in terms of what you're saying, it's like if you're signing someone to get minimum minutes, are you not sort of almost saying they're a bit crap?
I'm not saying they're a bit crap, but I'm saying why don't you...
I'm not saying you are, but sort of they end up that way by default because they... Like I've always thought the way sort of fringe players come in and they're expected to hit the ground running and then they get absolutely leathered for not being amazing because they've not played football for a month.
I don't give a shit.
No, I know you've not. I know you don't and you aren't, but it shows how tough that is as a role because...
Yeah, it is, but like those two did it very well. And I think if you said... Origi's a bit different because he was brought in different circumstances and had much higher highs. But if you could find a player that does 2 years... And you basically say to them, you know what, you could go and start every week for a lesser team and get loads more footy. Or you could maybe just win quite a few things here and play, not a lot of games, but a decent amount, and you'll contribute. And we think that when you'll play well. Then I think you can sell that to somebody.
That's back to the Shaqiri thing. What you're actually describing is buying Shaqiri.
Yeah, buying
more than buying Origi or even Minamino in a way. I think you're describing buying Shaqiri.
Shaqiri was technically 4th choice forward, though, wasn't he really? He was way higher up.
I think I'm buying somewhere between Minamino and Shaqiri. I think you're right to bring him up, but you're talking about the amount of games he got in 18-19. Whoever I'm having here is not getting that many. You know what I mean? And I'm not spending more than like 10 or 12 million.
It might just be a younger player as well who they see as a bit of a project, but further ahead in the development than Gordon. And you look at, you know,
someone who's 19 or 20.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Maybe they think, you know, and they can come and say like, listen, you're not going to play loads in the first year, but we think you need to adapt anyway. Maybe, you know, if they're from South America or something, and they're coming over, and you think, do you know what? Actually, even if even if we had less forwards, we wouldn't want to be playing him more. Do you know what I mean? This is actually an ideal situation. So there hasn't been a huge amount of succession planning, I don't think, at Liverpool in the way, you know, we've seen it sort of, you know, other top clubs. And I think, you know, the idea of someone coming in who you know, even in an ideal situation, you know, only makes 15 appearances for Liverpool, you know, that's better for them as well as better for Liverpool. Then there's maybe something in that.
Well, there's ways like, you know, Southampton have sort of got a couple of English clubs, sort of not cast-offs, not really the right word, but you know, like Livramento at Southampton and Lavia, for example, they basically managed to get him away and go, we can give you games here. Yeah. Now, we're obviously not going to be able to do the same as Southampton, but we might be able to give a kid from Chelsea, for example, more like an 18, 19-year-old. This is a nameless person, by the way.
Dom Solanke.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't know who that person is.
Dom Solanke.
But I'm saying I'd like that person.
Okay, I think that'll do us. I think we've rounded up. Kate has gone to Werder Bremen.
Where did he finish last year, Phil?
12th, I think, something like 13th. That. Yeah. Out of 18.
It's an interesting one, isn't it?
Gone to Werder Bremen.
It's an interesting one.
It feels sad, that to me.
It does feel a bit sad.
I thought he got a slightly better move, but
it feels like he's gone early on it, though. That's the thing for me. Why is he doing it? Like, his contract hasn't even expired yet. Like, it feels like he possibly...
Maybe he wants to get paid over the summer.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe he's just genuinely really like living in Germany.
It just can't be out.
Yeah,
there is that, yeah. That's fair.
Like, back in my far younger days, a girl who settled for me at 11:30. She should have gone to 1:30, see if she could have found Austin. All right, that's been our transfer roundup show. Carvalho might go out on loan. Thank you very much indeed to Ash and Jordan for producing this one. Obviously to these as well. Do support the Anfield Wrap in every single way. There's the YouTube stuff underneath. There's other ways and means as well. We'll see you later.